Good morning, Chillie, with Chillie's Cruises here. Um, Welcome to Travel and Cruise Industry News for September the 21st, 2019. As you can tell from the background, I am not at my normal facilities. I'm not at the farm, at my farm at least, with my little studio. I'm out at the horse farm this weekend. Taking care of a couple dogs and a cat and some horses. So things are looking a little different. I don't have my normal lighting, so I apologize for the lighting on the set. And it's just, I'm not at home. I'm not in my normal surroundings, so things are looking a little rough. My hair looks a little rough. Uh, anyway, welcome to Travel and Cruise Industry News. If you're new to this space, we talk about travel and cruise industry and everything therein. Cruise ships, ports of call. Of course, a lot of talk, especially this time of year, on weather um, and anything related therein. We can sometimes get into some crazy subjects. As of this morning, my numbers were showing we have 1,517 subscribers. I welcome each and every one of you. We certainly do appreciate it. And as always, there's all the little crazy links down in the description you can follow. Like if you go to Amazon on my link and buy something, we make a couple pennies that help support the channel. Anyway, it's top story today. We'll get right into it because we've got several things to cover. And by the way, there isn't a cat in house whose name is Nemo and might join us at any time. However, he's not as mouthy as Brat the cat. So, but Nemo might jump up and stick his face in the computer at any time. But he's not. He's a little quieter, so you probably won't hear him. He just jump and join us. Anyway, top story today comes out of the Panama Canal. Carnival Fantasy yesterday, or last evening actually, was goodness gracious, a cat and a dog both are jumping around like crazy. While traveling through the Panama Canal, the Carnival Fantasy suffered some damage after hitting the sides of one of the locks. According to a statement released from Carnival Cruise Line last evening, during the passage through the canal, the ship came in contact with one of the locks while the water levels were being lowered. There are no reports of injuries, thank goodness. The vessel was not under its own power, but was being assisted by the Panama Canal train as it moved through the locks. Initial assessments indicate damage is limited to broken glass and handrails on deck 9 and 10 aft, which my memory serves me correctly would be the Lido restaurant and the Serenity area. The Fantasy is expected to arrive in Puerto Limon as scheduled. So just a little accident in the canal. Passengers on the ship said that the crew immediately sealed off the area. Of course, they want to keep passengers out of the way. I don't know how much of the repair work they can do while they're amid cruise. As far as the impact when it hit, they said you could barely feel it. So it wasn't like it was a big jolt that threw people around or anything. The ship left Mobile on Monday on a 10-day sailing, a partial canal sailing. Normally, the Fantasy spends the year sailing 4-night Western Caribbean cruises from Mobile. So a little accident in the Panama Canal last evening and a little damage to the Carnival Fantasy. The other, of course, main story to talk about is weather. Excuse me. And I made a bad call on this one on Thursday. I was fussing at the excuse my throat this morning. Goodness gracious. I was fussing at the Weather Channel for putting all their emphasis on Imelda instead of Hurricane Humberto that was getting ready to smack Bermuda. And I was wrong. Imelda ended up being awful, dumping as much as 40 inches of rain on the folks in Texas. Just tons of flooding, some significant damage to a bridge on I-10 caused by some barges. The effects of this storm could affect these folks for months as opposed to days or weeks. It pretty much has moved inland now, but boy, it was awful down there. And again, my apologies to you folks for making light of your situation and trying to promote Humberto. As it turned out, Humberto, while it did cause some significant damage to Bermuda, as far as knocking out electricity on 80% of the island, the damage overall was reasonably minimal, and they're back open for business. The cruise ships haven't started going back in there yet. We'll see what happens later on today, but the storm is gone. Power has been restored to most of the island. Of course, they've got a lot of cleanup to do. But anyway, much better condition than we thought it was going to be. So while it was bad in Bermuda, it could have been a whole lot worse. And the folks in Texas got a ton worse, at least than I thought it was going to be. The other weather to talk about, there are Hurricane Jerry is pretty much, at least it looks like at this time, a non-story. It got up to a Category 2 for a while and then was downgraded back to a Category 1. It's kind of hooking around north of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. It's going to miss the Bahamas and kind of hook around. It could possibly come back. It could come in contact with Bermuda again toward the middle of the week. And it may intensify back to a 2 as it nears Bermuda. So that we'll have to wait and see. Currently, it's about 80 miles, 80 mile per hour wind is located northeast of St. Martin. Expected to move north towards Bermuda into the to next week. There are, because of that, Carnival has changed a couple of its itineraries. The Breeze is changing some itineraries, and the Sunshine. So, yeah, who knows what's going to happen with that? But look, Jerry just looks to me to be pretty much a non-event as opposed to a major event. Of course, I've been wrong. We also have 2 hurricanes that are hurricane strength out in the Pacific. Hurricane Lorena is heading kind of towards Cabo San Lucas. But it looks like it's probably going to skirt the coast, but they'll get some wind and some rains in Cabo. And then Hurricane Mario is kind of south of that, but both are in the same general areas. And at this point, it looks like there's going to be some damage and some rain and stuff. But again, they don't look like there's going to be major stuff for either one of them. We've got some more weather coming out of the uh, uh, Africa. There's a couple more storms that are watching that have not developed, but have possibilities of developing. So we've still got another couple weeks of the weather to be really stay on top of. Um, the latest information on Hurricane Lorena, that's the one that's heading toward Cabo. Hurricane warning is in effect for Baja California Peninsula from La Paz to Puerto Cortez. A hurricane watch is in effect for the east coast of Baja California Peninsula, north of La Paz to San Evaristo. Tropical storm warning is in effect for Puerto Cortez to Cabo San Lazaro. So all up and down the Baja is going to feel the effects of Lorena probably today and tomorrow. So that's it on the weather end of things. One other story from Carnival. During Humberto, the Carnival Sunrise, if you remember correctly, they had changed their itinerary and it canceled out going to Bermuda and went instead to Charleston. And then we're going to come back to Bermuda on the back end of the storm. And as it turned out, as they were heading into Bermuda on the back end of the storm, after changing the itinerary, they were slated to sail to Kings Wharf for a couple days before returning to New York City. The weather did not cooperate, and it led the planned stop. The ship did stop in Charleston and continue to Bermuda. But as it approached Bermuda the second time, the weather again was problematic. The passengers were told the ship would not be able to dock and would instead head back to New York City. So they wiped out Bermuda totally. The change of plans did not go over well with some of the passengers, but Carnival understood the frustration and immediately made it clear they would be compensated. And as my understanding, I believe everybody in that ship's getting a free cruise out of it. And again, this wasn't Carnival's fault, folks. I mean, I'm glad they got a free cruise. Don't get me wrong. But, Carnival did the right thing. They changed the itinerary because of the weather. The weather still was a problem and was not going to allow them to go into Bermuda. And if you recall, Bermuda at that point had no electricity on most of the island. So, Carnival did the right thing and taking care of the folks is a great idea. The other thing that, and I didn't have a chance to mention it the other day, probably most of you have heard about this story. The Delta flight from Atlanta to Fort Lauderdale had to make an emergency landing in Tampa after it plunged 30,000 feet. The oxygen mask dropped down, and just a scary thing. Nobody was hurt, but I'm sure it scared the bejesus out of everybody that was on that airplane. And all my years of flying, I've never had a close call. I've never had a scary thing happen. I've been in weather a couple times that have forced us not to be able to land. I was once in Chicago. I had to go circle around Indianapolis for a couple hours before we got into Chicago. But I mean, other than that, I've never had a close call on a plane. So I feel for those folks. I don't know what it's like, so I can't talk about that. But that had to be just a scary thought to have a plane drop 30,000 feet in a matter of a couple minutes. So anyway, that wraps it up today on Travel and Cruise Industry News. We'll be back in our normal location on Tuesday. As far as on a personal note, this is a ball game day for me. I've got a ball game tonight with my concessions business. Going to go sell some funnel cakes and lemonade. And I will be back out here at the horse farm until I believe I go home Monday night. So I'll be home Tuesday morning for our travel and cruise industry news back in our regular studios. If anything major happens between now and then, of course, I'll immediately go live or put up a video, one of the two, as time allows for me on a crazy weekend as this is going to be. Anyway, folks, again, welcome to the show today. We do these shows on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings at 6 a.m. Welcome you to join us anytime you can. And of course, always within a matter of a few minutes, it's posted as a video on the YouTube channel, so you can always check in later and watch it, as a number of people do, as they don't like to get up at 6 a.m. I can understand that. But anyway, I'll be back in my normal facility on Tuesday. You guys have a great weekend. You guys that are in way of weather anywhere in the world, be careful out there, folks. Don't do anything stupid. In the meantime, I regularly post videos on all facets of the travel and cruise industry. So if you want to keep up with the latest in cruise ships, ports of call, cruises themselves, my interview show called Chillie Chats, and of course, travel and cruise industry news, just hit the little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. Click on the bell notification system. You'll be notified when we go live or as soon as a new video is posted. And as always, folks, we'd appreciate a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Doesn't matter. Of course, I always prefer a thumbs up, but that lets YouTube know that somebody is watching, and we would appreciate that. So that's it from now out at the horse farm. This is Chillie from Chillie's Cruises. Later, y'all.